Thank you. Okay. So thank you so much for IESA to kind of invite all of us. About 2.5 months, Mr. Vidyashankar and Venkat had come to my office, and as we started planning for this, okay, it's a very special event because it is just not IoT, it is IoT Next. And this is coming after about 5 or 6 such events, and it is a summit, and it's a very distinguished gathering. And Mr. Vidyashankar asked me, what is the one message or couple of messages you would like to kind of get through? And I immediately said that it is important that Bangalore being what it is, we should actually get what Bangalore is best known for. We are the IT capital of this country, it's important. But we shouldn't forget, we are also the science capital of this country. We are the technology capital of this country. And how do we get the message across that we are proud of Flipkart, we are proud of our unicorns, we need lots of jobs, but we also should get the message, startup is not just one more Flipkart, one more Travel Khana, they're all important. But one can actually innovate in the science space, innovate in the technology space. The second related message was that we are the software capital of this country and maybe close to the software capital of being the planet with about 4 million people. But what is important is a lot of times the message goes around that hardware cannot be done in India. Oh, China has done it all, we can't do it in India. And some of us believe that while we are proud of what China has done, and we are also proud that a lot of hardware from China runs on software from India, and we can also do hardware. So we also need to change the message that startup is all about software, startup is also about hardware. And the third message is that because of we produce 1.6 million engineers in this country. Of course, the government at some point in time has decided maybe we have to downsize, and the AICTE chairman has gone on record, he wants to bring it down to 1 million. Okay, that is a number. So obviously we produce much smaller number of other scientists. So what is the role for others? And I said we should actually have someone, and we have Dr. Charit, who is actually a practicing cardiologist turned entrepreneurs. We also wanted to showcase some of them. That is how the panel was. So we have the country's premier and the first and foremost, the mother IIT called IIT Kharagpur. For some of you who possibly know, for some of you who may not remember, so the one way to remember IIT Kharagpur is that something which you do every day called Googling, that company is run by an IIT Kharagpur alumnus. What more you can ask for, right? And of course, we have the country's foremost IIM, business school, IIM Ahmedabad. And once again, part of the demystification that startup happens only in Bangalore and Bombay and Hyderabad and etc., Chennai. No, startup can happen in tier 2 towns. And here is my great hero, Dr. Ashok Shettar, sits in a small place called Hubli Dharwad area, and changing the world. Okay, and lots of times you come across accelerators, venture capitalists who will kind of fund a lot of software companies. But the moment you say hardware, it's going to take a long time, should I invest, etc., etc. And here is Satish, who has a mission only to kind of support hardware. So this is the panel. It's an amazing panel which we have. And my job is extremely simple. I'm a bellman. So I'm supposed to ring the bell and ensure that all of you have other engagements to go so that by around 5 o'clock or so you can leave. So what I'm going to do is kind of start with posing a kind of a questions to kind of get them, okay? So I had requested all of them have very kindly agreed. They will spend about a maximum of 8 minutes, okay, talking about one particular view. And then we will kind of open it up. So about 40 minutes plus about 45 minutes. And then we will have about 25 minutes for questions. And have your questions ready. You don't get a chance to have such a very distinguished panel. And so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, okay. Let me kind of start. Sir, being part of the country's distinguished technology school, and entrepreneurship has been so much part of you. And you also have done amazing stuff, because not only you have kind of produced large number of companies, etc., you have seen success and you have failures, and you will probably have some critical success factors for others to share, maybe other institutions and maybe other organizations. But far more important, I understand that now IIT Kharagpur has also put something very special, that they have a kind of special cell for this, and you have some great plans. So maybe this is a time for the country to know lots of things which are in the pipeline. So over to you, Professor Das.
Thank you, Professor Sadgopan. Really great to be here. Talking about our experience, IIT Kharagpur has been involved with promoting startups for quite some time. Of course, there are a number of similar efforts in the country, and some are doing really, really great. We have been a slow pacer, and we have focused primarily on technology because that's the only thing we understand. So the startups that we promote are in some way either direct technology startups. What Professor Sadgopan says is hardware. By hardware, I don't mean electronics hardware. By hardware, I mean something you produce which can be touched, as simple. And also, we promote startups which are critically technology enabled. So this is a space in which we have been working. We have seen a lot of successes, so I'll just share some of them, like IVIS Security. Currently, Cigital, they have got acquired. They started out of, there were some of my students also. They started out of, they basically is the first company in India who would come and offer you that, please give me, allow me to connect to your network through the public port, and within 2 days, I'll tell you your password. So in the meanwhile, I used to be an entrepreneur myself in my mid-career. I ran a couple of companies in the 90s and 2000. So they approached us, and I allowed them the access. And after 2 days, they came back with my password. So that's their value proposition. They're a very successful business. Some of the other success stories include Capillary Technologies, who's recently been listed in New York Stock Exchange, valued at, every share is valued at $2,500. IIT Kharagpur, for IIT Kharagpur, this was the first success as a venture funding institute. We have a venture funding option. We fund up to 15 lakhs for every startup, if they want. And we take 3% of the share in the name of a society that IIT Kharagpur runs. And for Capillary, we have been able to, we have sold off 300 of the shares, making 5 crores, which we are making into an endowment fund for the next startups to come up. So there are a number of such success stories. Data Resolve, who basically is an employee monitoring system, which is a technology-enabled system. And Ceramics, I'm particularly very proud about them, because they actually make oxides, different ceramic oxides of different metals. And a unique company of their kind, and a really hardware-based. Their sell volume at present is about $1 million in India as well as in abroad. Some of the companies who are doing well in terms of, these are companies which have succeeded well. There are a number of companies who are in the product, finalization stage. Their prototype have succeeded. One of them is showcasing upstairs. You could just have a look. The Nimble, Intugen, they're all our students. That's a gesture recognition device. There are companies, number of other companies who are, one is EcoGen. They have done a micro cold storage, which runs completely out of solar power. So it can run up to 7 days without any electricity being provided. So for small places, that's a great solution. They are currently looking for about 5 crore of investment to start their production. Their prototypes have succeeded. A number of them, and particularly one company that I would like to talk about what they're in their prototype stage is a company called AutoRobo, who are developing a driverless vehicle. They were the winner of Y Combinator last year, and they got a $1 million investment as a reward of that. And currently in USA, they are actually building up a driverless vehicle for US roads, because US roads have certain marking provisions and so on. So, I mean, not large in terms of numbers, but we are very proud that we have been creating some of the good startups. But certainly what is more important and in which some of us spend more time is studying and looking into companies who do not succeed. So I mean, companies fail. One reason companies fail is idea is not sound. Your core idea, the core technology idea is not. So we cannot build your product. I'm not talking about those. But the several companies I have seen failing with very concrete ideas, very solid technology, because of factors which I believe could have been done differently. And those are the factors wherein I think the role of the academic institutions come in a big way. So analyzing some of the factors, we see, for example, one of the major factors that pull down entrepreneurs or startups in India is the social factor. Because parents send their kids to IIT with the sole objective of picking up a good job. It's a 25 lakh package is what the parents want from the kid. And when the kid goes back and says that I'm not going to earn anything, you will have to support me for another 4 to 5 years so that I can become a millionaire. I'll sacrifice these 20 lakhs. The parents get absolutely upset. So I've seen a number of these failure stories included. Some was on the verge of getting a venture funding. The key promoter came under so much of social pressure that he just left and went to study abroad. There are several fail because our societal structure does not groom up our kids with the ability to take risks. The basic factor of being able to be a startup and entrepreneur is the ability to take risk. And that is socially somehow quite meaning. We have identified some of those failure factors, and we are slowly trying to build up models in the institute in terms of different ecosystems to go forward in terms of that. Professor Sadgoppan wanted me to also comment on some of the critical factors of success. Certainly, all factors that make a business succeed are critical for a startup to succeed. I mean, there is no denying of that. But what is more, a startup has some other factors which are very critical, and I would say that there are first 3 factors which are most critical. The first factor is mentoring. The second factor is mentoring. And the third factor is mentoring. It is mentoring, which is technological mentoring, business-wise mentoring, psychological mentoring, which is very, very critical for these kids, for them to be able to succeed as a startup. Because we'll have to understand that we live in India with the Indian upbringing and societal structure. Kids normally are not going to get the support that the family is expected to give otherwise. So it is the mentoring support which is, in my view, a major factor in terms of success of these startups. Besides the promoters themselves, those who are actually building up the company, it is a promoter's mindset, particularly the passion, the real passion. It is not that. I mean, students at times come across and want to do a startup because they have read the story of Bill Gates. I mean, you don't become a startup, you don't become an entrepreneur by just reading someone else's story. There has to be something really passionate about it. There has to be something which allows you to take risks beyond what is, I mean, thinking logically about what will happen if I fail. If you think about that, then you are certain to fail. Now, these factors are, I mean, the reason I put mentoring as the top is these factors, some people are born with these factors or somehow have acquired these factors. For others, it is the role of the mentors, the teachers, the faculty, and others in the ecosystem to be able to help and support them through this. Besides, there are several other factors in terms of academic flexibility is another very key factor. In terms of academic connected startups, I mean, one simple story is this Intugen kids who are on upstairs doing Nimble. 4 of them, none of them are actually going to get their degree. They are not IIT graduates. They are IIT JEE entrants because none of them have been able to complete their degree. Fortunately, IIT Kharagpur 3 years back introduced a mechanism of sabbatical in studentship. This was the first time we had this in India. So they can take up to 2 years leave. So they are still under the sabbatical leave. So I was, besides taking the demonstration, I was also asking them, what is your plan to go back? They said, sir, I do not know. We have $100,000 is invested by the venture capitalist. How do we go back and complete our semester? Now, this is a very, very big question. And it is becoming a key factor for success in terms of academic connected startups. So in one way, those who cannot take this risk, for them it is a deterrent. And those who have actually crossed the line, for them it is finally that they do not have a degree. They are all K+12 holders. They will not be considered a graduate even in rest of their life. So this is I think a very key factor to really focus on. Besides that, all normal business factors. Finally, in 1 minute, I'll just quickly round up in terms of our key plans in the next 3 years, because that's what the chair wanted me to focus on. One is certainly the factor I talked about, academic flexibility. That's a major restructuring that we are trying to propose in terms of IIT Kharagpur and Pan IIT. Trying to explore whether we can move from year-oriented system, which is the current system, to a credit-oriented system, where it's basically you earn your credits and you get your degree. Whether it is possible, whether we could have credit transfer between different institutes in the country. All those, you will hear them in the news in 2016, hopefully. Those are all under debate. If that would be possible, then a student could migrate from one city to the other and be in equivalent institutions and earn their credit. We are focusing very heavily on project-based learning. We are creating tinkering labs. One of our alumni, Arjun Malhotra, everybody would know his name, has donated about 6-7 crores to set up a tinkering lab in the name of one of our ex-faculty. So we are setting up that and setting up a whole process so that it could be more project-based learning for students at large. And most significantly, we have started setting up a research park in Kolkata, which will come up in 2017. It'll be a very big incubation center with all associated, and we are trying to design it in a way so that some of these problems we are seeing can be circumvented, so that there would be a part of the center which will have leading companies who will set up their research center. So the startups can work on their research problems, can get their mentoring from the companies directly. We'll also have an academic center there, so some of the company employees as well as students could actually continue to do their classes on the video mode and so on. So you'll hear more about that. I think I'll stop here and take questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We got a lot of insight, at least 2 interesting stuff. We all have heard many times, location, location, location. At least the real estate fellows talk about it. So now I heard mentoring, mentoring, mentoring. That's good. And we faculty, we all know faculty sabbaticals. Now you have a new interpretation of student sabbaticals. So it's good. So thank you so much. I would request Professor Rakesh Basant of IIM Ahmedabad, to talk about, they are one of the people who actually did lots of programs, particularly for engineering. In fact, at least about 6 or 7 of our students have gone and benefited from them. And the concept of accelerator, I think they are the first people to start. And a few interesting stuff during discussion I learned from Professor Rakesh Basant. They're talking of inter-institutional and institutions of different kind. It's just not only within IITs, within IIMs, going around and maybe looking at cluster of institutions, how the startup ecosystem can benefit and all. He has lots of interesting things. I think I will request Professor Rakesh Basant to share his views.
Thank you very much. We can take questions on what the center does later on. Lots of experiments are going on. My task is to broaden the perspective on the discussion. I just basically want to talk about 2 issues. How, in our sense, the nature of entrepreneurship is changing, or nature of startups is changing in the country. And given that change, what kind of challenges academia would face moving forward? All of us know that incubation requires mentoring, finance, a host of linkages. And many of our institutions pretty much do what was mentioned a little while ago in the case of University of Southern California. Accelerators have become quite popular and so on. But I think what we would face very tremendously in the coming years is the fact that most of our universities are not effectively multidisciplinary. And I'll explore that part of the story in the next 6-7 minutes. So all of us know that there is a startup boom happening. We are sort of slowly moving away from the web-based companies to technology companies. Tier 2 cities have also started to show some activity. We have seen a lot of first-generation entrepreneurs coming up compared to the family entrepreneurship of the earlier period. There are two things which people have talked about, but I think they need to be emphasized a little more. One is that increasingly startups use a variety of technologies. It was mentioned in the earlier discussion as well, that multiple technologies come together for innovation. Innovation for an economist like me is invention going to the market. And you try and put together different things to create something which is useful for the customer. So variety of, whether it's medical technology, whether it is various technologies which are used for communication. So that's one dimension, that you have multiple technologies coming together. The other change that I see, at least in the academia of our kind, is that increasingly students are very keen to use technology for social ventures. So a focus of social agenda in the entrepreneurship space is coming up in a very, very significant manner. Now, in a situation where competition is increasing, customers are becoming increasingly more demanding, multiple technologies have to be brought together in a context where social context needs to be understood well. What is key is to have a situation where multiple disciplines coexist, and not only coexist, actively interact with each other in an academic setting. And that is something which is not happening in India. So innovation and entrepreneurship at the core has multidisciplinarity in them. So if you are not able to bring it together in a sense which sort of different people complement each other's capabilities, the chances are that you will not be able to put up an act which would be successful. And apart from the factors that were mentioned a little while ago, my sense is that if your team composition or the nature of mentors and linkages are not such that they bring in perspectives and insights from different disciplines, we'll face a problem. So one way of looking at multidisciplinarity is to say that design, management, engineering, technology, science, all these need to come together. The other way of looking at multidisciplinarity is that if you're looking at the customer, if you're looking at social ventures, you need to understand the social context, you need to understand the bottom of the pyramid customer, then therefore you need social sciences, you need humanities. So as soon as you talk about these various disciplines, you immediately say you need an academic culture, an academic system where these interact with each other in a very, very active kind of a manner, and that interaction would create interesting ideas, which in turn might become ventures which are innovation-driven. Now, for a country like India, we do not have, to my mind, and I'm sort of putting my neck out, we don't have a single large university which can claim to have good quality people across disciplines. So if you go and teach in a good American university or UK university, you will find a music student there or a gymnastics student there, even in a course on economics or policy. The kind of variety or diversity that you see in a class, in that kind of university, you simply don't see here. As a consequence, those universities have natural spaces for all these disciplines to continuously interact, whether these are in the cafeteria or in the classrooms or in projects and so on. We don't have that. And wherever we have such possibilities, the silo culture is such that we don't talk to each other. Very few universities allow people to take courses across departments. If they allow, it's very difficult. Logistics becomes very, very complicated. IIT Kharagpur has started a course on innovation and engineering, right? And they have their own faculty, some part of the faculty. Ideally, they could have used faculty from different disciplines. They have a school of management. They have a school of intellectual property rights. But, I mean, he knows that they don't talk to each other for some reason or the other. The silo culture is so inbuilt in our situation. Take IIT Bombay, you have a very good school of management, a very good school of design, but they don't talk to each other, right? Now, if we do not recognize the essential element of innovation and entrepreneurship, which is going to be very important in IoT-like situations particularly, then we will lose out on interesting kind of ideas. Now, what do we do? What do we do? Of course, we need to mentor better. We need to provide finance and all the stuff that we have been talking about. My sense is that we cannot create universities like USC or Stanford or Berkeley in the next 10, 15 years. We should aim to do that, but we can't create that. But fortunately for us, we have a reasonably large number of cities, both tier 1 and tier 2 cities, where different institutions of very high quality, but focused on specific disciplines coexist. So take Pune, take Bangalore, take Ahmedabad, where management, design, architecture, engineering, communications, they coexist. And there's a possibility that if they are able to come together for joint courses, joint projects, focus on innovation and entrepreneurship, something interesting might come out of that activity. Now, I run a course at IIM Ahmedabad called New Technology Applications, Design and Business Models. This year, this course was done together with IIT Gandhinagar, NID, that is National Institute of Design, and IIM Ahmedabad. We formed teams of students across these. They looked at a particular technology domain, figured out interesting technology applications, picked one which was exciting, created a crude prototype, and then figured out how to take it to the market. Now, the learning is not whether they come up with a product at the end of the course. The learning is to be able to understand different kinds of perspectives which different disciplines bring together. Because that's where the need is to sort of try and understand the perspective that different disciplines bring. So I very strongly, I'm of the opinion right now, having experienced this kind of course and other kinds of cluster thing we are trying to do in Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar, lots of activities. You have a phase group which is very lively. You have situations where an IIM Ahmedabad company comes up, the coding is being done by IIT Gandhinagar, the user interface is being designed by the NID chaps, the law school people are trying to figure out whether it can be patented or not, what kind of IP would be relevant or not. So as soon as you create a space for different people to interact, many of these magical things might start to happen. And my sense, therefore, is that moving forward, we will need to very actively and proactively, some of us who are involved in this ecosystem, try and bring them together. It will not happen automatically. The silo culture is so deep-rooted, it will not happen automatically. And therefore, people like us, we need to make it happen. And once it picks momentum, I'm sure we will be able to do much, much more than we are able to do right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you hit on something that is so important to this country, the silo culture, and particularly among the academic institutions. And I know I particularly, it will kind of rhyme in my ears for many, many months. Okay. Idea from IIM, coding by IIT, and design by NID. I think it is such a deadly, great combination. I'm sure great products will come out of that. I think we need to create something like that because you have the best of breed in some sense working together. And all that I would say is that maybe IoT will make many of this happen. I think that is what should be the focus of next IoT summit, okay? And thank you so much. And now I'll request Professor Ashok Shetter. And he is, as I said, doing miracles in tier 2 towns. And I'm not going to say anything more. And let us hear some miracles from this miracle man. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Before I talk about incubation, I would like to tell about my city. I think most of you know Hubli Dharwad. If you don't know, it is 400 kilometers from here. It is the second biggest city of Karnataka, but it primarily depends upon trade and commerce. There are no new age industries. Most of the graduates, like any other tier 2 or tier 3 city of India, migrate from there to either Hubli, Mumbai, or Pune. The whole story started in 2006 when IT wave was very strong. In Hubli, we also thought that we'll hold IT investors meet to attract the new age industries. So along with the government, with a lot of fanfare, we did a big IT investors meet wherein more than 100 delegates where all the companies were represented. I mean, that day, we thought that something is going to happen. But at the end of the day, none of the companies showed any interest to come to Hubli. Okay, they thought that the city is not yet ready. So it was a great disappointment, a kind of anger in all of us that, okay, Hubli Dharwad will not grow economically or the migration is not going to stop. Then 1 year down the line, in 2007, I was sitting in my chamber. A bearded guy, I think he is here, Vivek Pawar, walks into my chamber and says hi and starts introducing himself and said that he has a startup in Bangalore. He wants to get out of Bangalore and move to a tier 2 city, and he's looking for various alternatives and campuses. Then I said, this is a great opportunity. We sat together, talked, whatever was required, we were ready to offer. That's how Sankalp came to Hubli. It started with 5 to 7 people in 2007 in my campus. All 5 to 7 people were ex-TI and great leaders. And by 2010, it was a 100 people company, crossing $1 million mark. This particular success, which really happened by accident, started making us to think. I mean, it forced us to think, can we repeat this success? Can we formalize whatever has happened in a better framework? So this is how the thought process started. And we knew that the challenges of tier 2 cities is very different. Having an incubation center, having a research park in Bangalore, Mumbai, or Delhi is different thing. But having an incubation center in a tier 2 city where there is no entrepreneurial ecosystem, there are no new age startups, it is really a challenge. We knew that challenge. And at the same time, we also knew that BVB College has its own limitation. It is not MIT, it is not Stanford, or it is not a IIT. It doesn't have a big research base or a innovation base that can really support these startups. And at the same time, due to the absence of new age companies, entrepreneurs, how we are going to mentor and grow the companies here? That is also a challenge because there is no support system all around you. With those challenges, we knew that we have to create a model which will work for a tier 2 city in India. From the beginning, we knew that we can't just copy an incubation model of a bigger city or incubation model of a IIT. We said we will evolve our own model. Fortunately, many like-minded people got together, like Vivek, Dr. Madhu Atre. So we started the thought process in 2010, and in 2012, we launched what we call as CTI, Center for Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. The uniqueness of this model, I would like to share with you. It is a two-pronged approach. The first prong is try to attract the experienced entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs from bigger cities who want to move out by creating the value proposition. So our one approach was trying to attract experienced entrepreneurs who want to move out of bigger cities or entrepreneurs who have some connectivity with that region. Somehow create a value proposition such that these people come to the campus and start their new ventures, or they start a part of the venture which is there already in Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore. So once these experienced entrepreneurs come into your campus, use their strength to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem within the campus. Because these are already experienced entrepreneurs, they bring along with them experience as well as their own network, and they can inspire the student community. So initially we focused on bringing in such startups, and when they came to campus, they started changing the culture. I mean, we ensured that there is a formal and informal intervention wherein students will be coming in touch with these entrepreneurs, and that whole thing becomes contagious. So slowly the presence of these entrepreneurs started influencing the student community, and the student startups started taking birth. Today, I'm very proud that in my campus, there are 35 startups, technology startups. We have created about 400 engineering jobs in Hubli. In Bangalore, 400 engineering jobs is nothing. But in Hubli, 400 engineering jobs. Till today, no other industry in Hubli or all the industries together in Hubli, Dharwad have not created 400 engineering jobs, whereas our incubation center has created. And at the same time, the whole thing, how it has benefited the student company. You see, being in a tier 2, tier 3 city as an engineering institution, you have a challenge of interaction with the industry. Students don't get first-hand exposure with the industry the way it can happen in Hubli. Today, around 60 student teams, 64 student teams are working with these startups. And they are working on real-life problems. They are working with the real customers. 4 teams in my campus will be working with GDV Australia, okay, designing the software for wearables for old age people. So that kind of exposure is happening to the student community, and at the same time, there is a lot of culture change, I can say. Every month, at least you have 3 to 5 student teams coming to CTI and starting their discussions about their own startup. Out of these 35 companies, 25% of them are my own student startups, which have been started post 2013-14. Okay, so there are many success stories. Today, Sankalp Semiconductors, no doubt, we have not incubated them, we have supported them in the campus, but today it is one of the biggest analog VLSI company in India, or for that world, with 600 engineers working. Navya Biologicals, it has developed 7 biosimilars, okay, around 45 people working there, and it is attacking a $45 billion market worldwide. It was one of the company which accompanied Prime Minister Modi during his visit to Germany. And my own student startup, Labinap, got $100,000 funding from a venture. Like that, we have many stories. Another batch, my 2014-15 batch student product, today, They have developed a kit. You see, in India, every one of you have 10 brands of milk to buy. Nandini is there, Saptagiri is there. So, which is the best? How you decide? I mean, in each of them, how much is urea, how much is sugar, how much is, you will never know. They have designed a 25 rupees kit. You can just take it home, test with whatever milk you are buying. Okay, if you, so that kit is very popular today. They are trying to market it. So like this, we are seeing a lot of success stories. Another big transformation that is happening is, earlier, the value proposition created by the college was more about space, facility and all. Today, companies come to us not just because of the, or the startup come to us not just because of space or the facilities. It is because of the frugal development they can do in the campus. Because there is a system wherein the student teams get attached to these companies, wherein the research or the product development for the company will be very cost effective. That system we are able to develop. So that frugal way of operating is real value proposition that we are creating. The third, another experimentation that is happening is about interdisciplinary problem. I mean, we live as silos. What we have done is we have created research clusters, like cluster in energy, cluster in IoT, cluster in materials. These clusters are trying to partner with the startups. Right now we are trying in IoT, so that the cluster from the beginning has partnership with the startups, wherein the product development happens in the most frugal way. Contribution from academia and industry experience, research of the faculty, all three together working towards a product. And before you take up that, you know what IPR you are going to own, in what way you are going to distribute. That is one model we are trying to work up. And at the same time, we are encouraging the faculty to go for partnership with the companies. They can start the company, they can partner with any startup that comes into the campus. This is how we are trying to handle it. But one weakness at this point of time I would like to tell, still largely it is not innovation driven. That's how we want to move in the future. In the initial stages, our challenge was entirely different, to bring that ecosystem, to demonstrate that a high technology company can operate from Hubli, a tier 2 city. Okay, excite the student about the entrepreneurship. Now our challenge is to integrate the research and innovation with whatever entrepreneurial ecosystem is there. Another thing is, most of the companies that have been created are from IT, ITS, okay, composite materials, biotechnology. We did not have any company, we were not able to create or support any company in a product space, a physical product space, or from mechanical engineering. It is basically because of the lack of the support system that was not there. So in the last 2 years, 1 year, we are setting up a center, something which we call it as a learning factory. Okay, wherein we are investing about 3 crores. Okay, the whole learning factory is designed in such a way that a person with an idea of a product, a physical product, any electromechanical physical product, if he enters right from the design tool to the prototyping to 3D printing or die making, every facility we have set up. Okay, so that is what we want to take forward in the coming days. Our dream is that someday this CTIE will be able to create at least, not someday, our target is 3 years from now, 2,000 engineering jobs in Hubli. We believe that becomes a tipping point, okay, that can change the face of that city. And at the same time, we want to bring out this as a model, which any other engineering college a humble engineering college like ours can copy and make a difference to the tier 2 city in which they exist. That is our ultimate goal. I think we are at it. I mean, we are able to evolve that kind of model today. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shettar. It is inspirational. I am sure that you will do it before 3 years. And all that I will do is I will ensure that Karnataka celebrates that because it is important. Okay. And what is more important is that, see, we have only dozens of the metros. We have hundreds to thousands of tier 2 towns. So what you do, if you can multiply even 5%, 10%, the impact will be much larger. That's why I wanted you. I'm glad that you come and shared the secrets. Thank you. And now I will request Satish to talk about from how he came about. He started as a hardware guy, but now he's actually talking of how he is going to support the hardware tech startups. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, sir. I think it's very exciting to be part of this team. A lot of the people here would have been my professors if I were in their schools. So I would like a little more attention, and because I'm going to throw some numbers at you guys now. It's a little precursor to what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to give you two scenarios. These are two companies, international startups, a little over 5 years old, and I want you to pick which one are you going to invest in. I'll give you some numbers. Company A, about $60 billion valuation, $6 to $7 billion fundraised, $10 billion in revenue, 60, 6.5, 10. Company B, $45 billion valuation, about $2 billion capital raised, and about $12 billion in revenue. 60 versus 45, 6 to 7 versus 2, 10 versus 12. How many of you would invest in company A? No one? How many would invest in company B? Fantastic. So I did the same exercise a little before, randomly with people. I didn't give the numbers, I gave the names. Company A is Uber, company B is Xiaomi. So Xiaomi does hardware, and both of them, you know what Uber does. Both of them largely in the consumer space. What I'm trying to get to is almost everybody talks about hardware being hard. And with me being a hardware engineer over the last 15, 20 years, I kind of say it the other way around. I say hardware is hard because software is easy. People, and the reason I gave these numbers was just to kind of give you some sense in terms of data that even at scale, a hardware company could be extremely successful. And 5 years ago, you had not heard of any of these two companies. So they are, in a sense, startups who have really, really grown well, and maybe the best possible stories in terms of startups. So coming back to this discussion, and Revex. So I'm the CEO of Revex. We are a hardware accelerator. And just a little bit of background is that, I'm a electronics, semiconductor, and embedded software guy. Basically did about 3 startups, and after I sold my last one, I was trying to figure out what to do, and started helping out friends who used to come to me and say, we are stuck in this place, we're stuck in that place. Typically what happens, when you're jobless, right? Almost everyone calls for some help or the other. And over the last few years, since I was involved in just developing hardware products, I had like a mental ecosystem of partners and what needs to get to take a hardware company forward. So then we thought, another friend of mine was trying to run a generic accelerator. Then we said, we're going to put this together and start focusing on hardware, because over the last year and a half, we've seen this tremendous explosion of, what typically you can call a makerspace, where, the cost of hardware, general purpose hardware that you would use in consumer goods have dropped significantly. And that has enabled a lot of people to come and try out things. And I'm going to focus on stuff that we are doing with respect to academia and where and what our vision is with respect to that. And typically, if you see the way a lot of these students start out, they, in some cases, the privileged ones would have access to some incubator inside the university where they get some mentorship, as the professor mentioned, and some help. And a lot of silicon companies have now started giving out development kits to these schools and encouraging people, encouraging students to come and try some things. And at the same time, you've had the Arduino and the Raspberry Pis revolution that have gone in the last 12 months independently. So if you go to a typical incubator in a college, you'll see a whole bunch of these boards and professors trying to help students, trying to encourage them to, do something. Now, once they leave the college, for some reason or the other, the college and the student relationship kind of takes a little bit of a backseat because, like the professor mentioned, maybe the social pressure and people are trying to look for jobs and they do not want to pursue the stuff. And people who want to pursue it come with this notion that they have done something on a Raspberry Pi, and now in 3 months I can make a product and sell it. And we've seen this time and time again that people go try that and they try to build a kludgy prototype, go show it to people, show it to investors. They all show interest, but nobody puts in the money. So effectively, what this process is doing is the colleges are encouraging them to start out something, and then they go try it for 6 months, and they come back where usually the family comes back and tells them, see, I told you to go get a job. Nobody's going to go invest in this. So one of the biggest reasons why this is happening is the lack of understanding of what it takes to build an electromechanical hardware product that can reach the hands of the customer. And a lot of the stuff that we want to focus on and we are focusing on in the accelerator is about talking to these guys and looking at whatever prototype they have done and figuring out a way to take them into what I call pre-production in about 6 months' time. So effectively, they come into the accelerator. We go through a fairly elaborate, DFM course in some sense. Since there are professors, I can use the word course. I normally would not use it, So what happens is, people come, again, as I said, with these, really low-cost prototypes where they, at the most, they would have probably spent about 25,000, 30,000 rupees. And now they have some interesting applications. Now, they have no clue of how to get an industrial design done. They have no clue, how to get this damn thing manufactured. They don't know where to buy components from. They don't know where to go mass manufacturing. They don't know how to get it tested, how to get it certified. Now, unlike a software company, a hardware company is completely an ecosystem play. 2 guys sitting in a garage, we've heard these stories about how 2 guys in a garage came and did something and that changed the world. All the way from HP printers to Apple, to that. Now, if you look at the amount of time it took those garage guys to go build a product, the market is not going to wait. Today's situation is very, very different. The 2 guys in a garage would probably get some stuff running, and next you need somebody to take them and convert it into a real product. Now, so the activity in terms of what we do in the physical accelerator is trying to help these people go over, understand all of this, connect them with mentors who have kind of done this before. And that's an area where we find significant challenges because, we do not find too many hardware entrepreneurs in India. I mean, I don't care whether they're succeeded or not, but we don't find people who have attempted, gone through the cycle, and understood the ecosystem. So part of the activity involves trying to get them to understand this, get them to meet these partners, and with the new government initiatives in terms of encouraging electronic manufacturing and organizations like IESA, who's been putting a lot of effort from a long, long time. In fact, I can give you one example. 2009 was when the product that I was doing was awarded by IESA as the best consumer product in that year. And that, in fact, as an entrepreneur, gave me a lot of boost, to take the, the product forward and try it in, few other countries. So I think these organizations have been doing a lot of work, but what is missing is the whole chain. So what professor talked about different silos in colleges, and trust me, professor, the same thing exists in industries. So there are independent guys working, and unfortunately, from an Indian perspective, all of them work on a consulting model. So it is very hard for a startup to go and say, I'm going to pay you $50,000 to do a cool ID. From some students who started a consulting company, who came out of National Institute of Design. So there are a lot of barriers. And now, whether we like it or not, China, at this point of time, is able to solve a lot of them. There are a lot of prototyping houses. And China, as a country, as far as manufacturing goes, they have excelled at making efficiently 1 unit, 5 units, 25 units, 100 units, 100,000 units. So for every volume, there is a manufacturer. And you don't have to burn a hole in your pocket and sink in a lot of money. So we are bringing all these partners together. Half of them are in India, half of them are in China. Hopefully within the next couple of years, the thought process is that there'll be more Indian than Chinese firms trying to help out these startups. So we just about started our first batch about a month and a half ago. So we're working with 6 startups, and they will complete probably by March, April. And the idea is that we remove the manufacturing risk of whatever they are doing and make the company a lot more investable than they were before. Through either they're being able to now build the product and have all relationships that's required. And for a venture capitalist who looks at product development being a risk, we're trying to kind of provide some ways by that fear could be eliminated. The second part of the accelerator, as far as the academia goes, is Professor Pata talked about all the social pressures and so on. So if you see what's happening through these incubation centers, plus some of the industry-led initiatives, there are a lot of hackathons and makeathons that are getting conducted in colleges. Now, this is a great step, because this is like a very early test of trying to put 2-3 people together and see how you would work, not just from a technology or a product perspective, but from a team perspective. Are you able to work together? Do you have the potential to go through thick and thin and build a big startup? Now, unfortunately, what's happening with these hackathons is these hackathons are typically 1 or 2 day events. People come, establish teams, do something. Some of them win prizes, some of them try something, go back, and the teams disperse. Now, there is no continuity, in this stuff. So, again, as part of the accelerator, we are putting together a platform which will, in some ways, encourage these teams to stay as teams. So think of it like an IPL for hackers. So we're going to rank a group of students who come participate in XYZ hackathon. They did this, and the judges gave them this score or whatever. So that team's record is going to be maintained. And we're going to do this all across hackathons that get done in the academia. And the idea is that in some ways you're trying to give some confidence to these companies, and then somewhere it's trying to keep that team intact. So ultimately, by the time they get out of school, if they have tried 2 or 3 these projects together and they see things improving, then there is a potential of trying to convert this team into a small startup. Now, social pressures, yes, that's a very different problem. But ultimately, typically what is required is when you come out outside of your degree, there is something that you have to show. And hopefully, if there are enough hackathons, enough makeathons, and if we're able to create a platform where universally we can put the teams together and rank them, there is some test of success when these, college kids, work together. So hopefully, somewhere I think we will try to help crack that stuff. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is, but the attempts are, from a hardware perspective, try to remove hardware as a bottleneck, try to remove the fear of hardware, cost of developing hardware is constantly decreasing. All of you know the impact of mobile phones on the general ecosystem. So when you ask anybody about what is the best thing a mobile phone has done, people talk about App Store, people talk about connectivity, and many such things, which are all true and great. But one of the biggest things mobile phones have done is shaken up the component industry. I mean, think about it. Today, if I were to design an IoT device, chances are pretty high that about 70% of the components that I want to use in my device are used in the cell phone. So what it is doing is, without you creating volumes, the industry is reducing the price of those components, which is a very big side benefit of what the mobile phones have done. And people who are in the hardware industry appreciate it, but those who are outside are not really aware of this. So one of the things that you see a lot of wearable companies, for example, even in medical systems, a lot of the stuff, you can actually build with components that go into a cell phone. So cost is no longer going to be an issue. Coming to investment, investment is a slightly challenging stuff because most incubators are comfortable funding in the 10 to 20 lakh range, but that's not sufficient for a startup. You would have heard of a lot of good stories about Kickstarter, how you can raise money through crowdfunding and then go build a product. It's a great way to do it, but Kickstarter or any crowdfunding platform is not very mature in India because it's a platform where people pledge. So you're not really buying, you're pledging. So there's a big difference, in terms of how that money, can come in. And also, people try to kind of underestimate the cost of production. So sometimes the Kickstarter money may not be, sufficient. So what we are trying to advocate a model where, no matter what industry you're in, if you are building a piece of hardware, how do I get to 25 samples, which are mass manufacturable? So when I say mass manufacturable, if I can build 25 products, now without changing the design, without changing anything around it, I want to be able to go and say, I can build 1,000 units tomorrow. So if we are able to crack, the funding for taking a company up to 25 prototypes, I think the startups could take the next step and get to a point where they go get some customers, achieve product market fit, and see if the company can be built. So those are my collection of thoughts. Thank you again, Professor, for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Satish. Our students working on hardware, at least I have one place to recommend. So far, I didn't have. Okay, thank you. And just in a lighter vein, I thought that, because it came twice about these social pressures. Something interesting has happened in the last 5 years. See, about 10 years back, the pressures were actually from parents. About 5 years back, I found the pressures are actually from their would-bes, their fiancés. And I still remember that, about 5 years back, there was actually a case of a boy coming and said, sir, I thought I will do the startup. He did for about 9 months. He had a job from Intel. And he says, my fiancé says that, look, if you're not joining Intel, I may look at other options. Okay, so he joined Intel. But same interesting coincidence, 1.5 years back, something similar story, it was the other way. So the girl actually had a job in Intel. And then the boy said, look, if you're going to work for that boring company, I'm not going to. So she decided to, and she joined her fiancé to start up. So things are changing also. So thank you, okay? And see, our Dr. Charit, I kind of know him for many years, but last 5 years, he has become my hero because I found him struggling and struggling. I thought that, he was barking the wrong tree, but he seemed to have finally cracked it. And I even once told him, Charit, you are a cardiologist, and you should spend your money saving lives. Don't waste your time as an entrepreneur, etc. And luckily, he didn't listen to my advice, and he managed to be. And of course, there was always some IT behind. So there was an IBMer who actually kind of helped him. Little bit, some of us tried to help him. We didn't do much, but nonetheless, he kind of acknowledges us. And his story is something which I want. And I want more science, more medicos, more biotechs to also kind of pursue this, because otherwise we keep hearing engineers doing this. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. And good evening. I hope all of you are awake. There is an important message I have for all of you. And to start with, what was common between a medical doctor, somebody from IBM Research, IIITB, IIM, medicine and technology have the same goals, right? Both of us want to make your life better, right? But technology has advanced to a phenomenal extent. Medicine has not to such a very extent. So when you think of medicine, all of you think, oh, it's a very high-tech industry, right? And CT scans and MRIs come to your mind. But the truth of the matter is that most of the tools that all of us use and the systems that we use to treat people day in and day out have been designed 200 years ago. And that's not changed, right? ICUs, all of you know, are places where people live or die, right? The amount of technology that is used inside an ICU, your phone in your pocket has more computation than what is used in an ICU. If you order a parcel from Amazon, more technology goes into that than you going and visiting your doctor. So that is the state of medicine that exists. And what I know as a doctor and what I see day to day was a problem, a nail that needed to be solved. Right? India, 5 million people die of heart disease every day. And I see this on a day-to-day basis. And 3 million of them will die. So if you were to look to the left and to your right, one of you is going to die of a heart attack. And that is a fact. What is sad that 50% of those people can be saved. Right? Unlike the West, where delivery of healthcare is a solved problem, that's not the case in India, right? 90% of all medical resources and people are there serving 15% of our population. You can't produce more people like me. It took 15 years of training for me to become an interventional cardiologist. However, the future is where technology is going to be the leveler. Technology is going to be the bridge that is going to ensure that healthcare and lives can be saved no matter where. It doesn't need to be it could be a tier 2, it could be a village. And that is the start of my story. I wanted to solve the problem of cardiac diagnosis. So when I went about trying to solve the problem, people, when you go about asking people, they say, well, you're not from IIT, so nobody's going to fund you. Okay. Then they say, well, your idea of remote diagnosis needs a hardware-based IoT device, and nobody's going to fund hardware companies. Well, going around, I met a mentor, and I cannot stress enough the role of a mentor. And that is something, those are people, all of you may be mentors, and all of you may have received mentorship. But here was a man who connected me to different people. He said, you need a hardware team to do it here? Well, here's the hardware person. And you need an algorithms people to do it. And here you need a software people. And that is how the foundation of Tricog started, is that a collaboration of medicine and a collaboration of computer science, a collaboration of algorithms and a collaboration of hardware into one company that was established just to do one thing, a simple thing. I want to diagnose when you're having a heart attack and give you one tablet of Disprin, and we are going to save 23% of your lives. And of course, thereafterwards, other things. And thanks to technology, and thanks to this combination of all these disciplines, right? We have started, and we are now at 160 different clinics and small hospitals in Bangalore, in Hubli, in Dharwad, in Shimoga, in small towns. And over the past 6 months, 25,000 patients have gone through the system, and over 2,000 patients with acute heart attacks have been treated. None of this would have been possible as a doctor alone, right? If it wasn't for the amplification of technology and what technology brings to the medical field. So this is something that I would like to share with all of you, and hope that all of you will reach out to other people. Right? The one silo that none of you mentioned is actually the medical silo. It is the worst place to be. Yes, people don't talk that much, and to ignite minds, we need more mentors, and we need people working together, crossing that divide, crossing the technology divide, the hardware divide, and the medical divide. People will say, well, if you need to solve real-world problems, and sure, apps are good, but you do need hardware as well. And that is something that, a message that I want to give to any of you young people: do not shy away from trying to solve hard problems, because the minute you try and solve a hard problem, your impact that you are going to create by your work is going to be much, much more. So right here on this dais, Dr. Das's students are some of the best algorithm specialists in the world, right? Dr. Basant's students are some of the sharpest minds in the world. Professors' students have some of the best machine learning experts in the world, right? The amount of talent that there exists amongst people right here in this room, and the amount that you can network with, is an unimaginable asset that I think we should somehow form a platform where we can share and connect with.
Thank you. We have about 11 minutes. So what I would want is that we would like to have real fast, focused questions. Okay, shoot the hard questions, and my job is to kind of deflect it to the panelists. I don't have to answer any of them. Okay, and let us make it fast. Okay, so kind of, okay, sometimes, it's a kind of little blinding, so sometimes I may not be able to see who is, okay. Yeah, I think there is one there, right? Okay, so let's see, he's running. Okay. See, somehow, there's one problem. They make it so blinding. I don't, yeah. Huh? Yeah, I don't know, so I think.
Hi, I'm
Yeah.
Dr. Fendler from the Indian Institute of Science. And one of the biggest challenges we've been having is with IP and the policy. So a lot of these government institutions insist that the institute fully owns the IP. I'm interested in what the policy is for IIT Kharagpur and IIM.
IP policies. Oh,
We have the VCs will not look at startups from ISC.
where are you?
Hi, I'm here. Here.
Oh, yeah, right
Yeah.
below the light. So it's
Ah.
blinding there.
Sorry.
Yeah, now it's better.
So
Yes,
ISC, lots of venture capitalists won't come and look at startups from ISC because it has a reputation for always insisting on ownership of the patents and
Okay.
not licensing. So how is IIT Kharagpur dealing with this?
We are joint owners of the IP. So it's to the extent of investment that we do, which is 3%. So IIT Kharagpur, can you have the lights dimmed, please? Or if off, can't see anything. IIT Kharagpur, being a central government institute, actually cannot fund the events. So we have a separate body under the chairmanship of our director who owns these IPs.
We do as
But
well.
it's to the extent of funding actually done, which is 3%.
But you're saying that they own the IP still, a certain percentage.
No, the IP is with the creators. But
With
we
the
have
startup.
3% rights on the, which is a shared one, where we have 3% and the creators have 97%.
3% of revenue or 3% of ownership?
IP is owned by the creator. We don't take the IP. We don't take the IP. IP is with the creator. I'm talking about the revenue share is 3% and 97%. But IP is with the owner.
Yeah. And then for the last speaker, in terms of advisors, I know lots of startups in Bangalore are getting help from St. John's Research Center. This hospital has been a home for many startups. They're very open and are giving free advice and trial space.
So in the case of our startups, since we are not a technology institution, we don't generate IP of the kind which IIT Kharagpur generates. But whenever we fund companies, we do not take ownership of IP. But in some situations, we keep a claim on IP if nothing works. So it's a clause which says some kind of a contingency clause that if the company completely folds over and there's a possibility of using that IP to generate revenue to pay part of whatever we had invested in, that clause is kept. But the ownership remains with the entrepreneur.
Any other question? Yeah, there is one. Okay, somebody can. Yeah. Get a mic. Yeah. Just wait until the mic comes to you.
Hello, I am Dr. Sheshachalam from BMS College of Engineering. This is a question to Mr. Satish. At what level the academic institution or the students can get connected to your accelerator?
Ideally, what we would want is we would want an engineering prototype. We don't work at the idea level, but if they have done a prototype of some sort, then we would be more than happy to take a look at them.
Okay, so how do we invite you?
Just connect on the website,
Okay,
or we can, talk after the show offline.
thank you, thank you.
Okay, it is REVVX. REVVX. Okay, so that is what it is, and then rest of it you can actually find. And so do remember that accelerators are different from incubators. So, accelerator is the kind of second stage, Incubators, you can walk with pretty much little open mind, some vague idea, etc. But here you really want things to be, because, accelerator as a concept is still not widely known because accelerators are new in India. So incubators have been around for 10 years, so people relate to incubator. But I find that we run both an incubator and accelerator. A lot of times we find that an accelerator, we kind of push them to the incubator. So,
Yeah, if I can make a comment on what Professor was saying. So incubator is when you're trying to figure out, what needs to be done. So accelerator is where you have at least figured that out, and we are trying to make you run faster. So if you have taken the wrong direction, we'll make you run in the wrong direction faster. So that's why most of the time student entrepreneurs, it's beneficial that they spend some time inside the campus incubator, work with professor, ideate, and once they have a little more clearer idea of what they need to do, then an accelerator will be able to help them better.
Sir, this is a question anybody can answer, generic question. So as per my knowledge, Bharat means is a knowledge seeker or enjoying knowledge. But we see multiple billionaires in the 100 billionaire list of Forbes magazine or whatever, whenever the list comes. But why there is no investment? So we have capital in country, but we don't see they are investing in knowledge companies. So what could be the reason?
not investing in knowledge companies. Okay, so at least to me, I believe that behind every one of the product there is some knowledge, right? So I don't think that zero knowledge companies nobody would have invested. Okay, but I don't know. Can you elaborate what you mean by knowledge companies?
So technology companies, let us, not services companies.
But why do you say so? Give me an example. So I'm still not getting it.
Okay,
Yeah.
we largely are considered a services industry. Software, we have big companies in Bangalore, but mostly on services side, none on software side. We have Microsoft, Google, but we don't have such companies coming out of India. Or nobody is investing. We have same people. You only told Google is promoted or pioneered or mentored by an Indian technologist on top of it, or even currently Hathway is pioneered by Indian IIT Kharagpur alumni, but none of this happening in India itself. What is the reason?
Well, I mean, I'll try to take a general stab at the, at an answer. I think the question is, you see a lot of services companies and a lot of high-end technology companies don't get funded easily. I think, this was probably a lot more truer 10 years ago than what it is now. You have to understand the venture capital industry in India is also fairly new. Most large funds have just finished one fund cycle. So in some ways, they're also trying to identify entrepreneurs who are going to come out and take this risks and go build a product. The issue with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs is most of them seem to fall back on services to fund a product idea, or they feel that let them do some services because the VC ecosystem is not very mature, friendly, or whatever you may call it. Let's go get some revenue and take that revenue and go build a product. Usually large and very big product companies are not built that way. A Facebook or a Google wouldn't have been what they are without the amount of capital, that was behind them. So if you try to map that to what's happening in India in the last few years, there are companies who've been significantly funded. And, and a lot of this is growth capital. So I think we as a country needs to go through this cycle of getting this innovation coming out into startups, the startups being successful, generating wealth for people. And once it generates wealth for these entrepreneurs, they will probably be the first set of people to put in more money. It's already happening at the angel investing level, but if you try to compare it with established ecosystems like Silicon Valley or Israel, we are far behind. But if you study the pattern today to what it was 5 years ago, there is a huge positive trend. So the number of money that's invested in Indian startups today is a lot more than what it was 5 years ago. So I think it is changing, and the industry, the academia startups are also beginning to show up. So I think you can look at it as saying we're probably 15, 20 years behind, some of these established ecosystems, but all the pieces are coming together. So probably if we have this conversation 5 years from now, you won't be having this question.
Hope so.
Okay. So we'll take the last question, if there is one. Okay. Yeah, please.
For some time, we have been hearing about open source hardware, and I think there is an institute around that. And I know that you've done a lot of work on, building hardware with the IP. So how does the open source hardware platform stand, and what's the role of open source hardware, if you can elaborate?
Well, open source hardware is a great step. I mean, just like what happened with very early, open source software, the hardware also is in the same situation. Again, if you were to compare it to software, you should look at where open source software was about 15 years ago, where largely you had pieces of software that was generated in universities, and people would put that under open source. And companies would, or startups would take that, or students would take that, or entrepreneurs would take that, and then start modifying and building things on top. So it was essentially something that would get you started, quickly. Over the last 5 to 10 years is where companies like Google and Facebook and all these other big names are putting out finished products in open source. Now, hardware is way behind that. So you don't have, when you say open source hardware, basically it means that a design is available for you to use. It does try to address a lot of the feature functionality that design intends to, and somebody can take that from there and go build. So effectively, it's all about shortening the time to market. So in terms of comparison, they're not finished products. They are nowhere similar to what the software industry is. But again, this is going through that evolution. I think it's a great step for somebody who does not want to build, mundane things. For example, today, if you were to do, if you want to build something for machine learning, you will probably start out with all the 3-4 pieces that are being put together and then start writing your application code. The hardware hopefully will get to some point. There are stuff which are like modules. For example, if you want a particular RF technology as a module, you could take something and then start using it right away. But as a system, you still have to build, things around that. But it's a great, great initiative. Anything that will reduce time to market for hardware engineers, reduces the risk of product development, is a big step.
So thank you. Yeah, please.
I would just like to add a few comments to that. One is, I'm sure we are not taking open source as free. So that has to be remembered, because we often confuse between open source and free. So software has started doing very well in open source because it has been able to de-link the free sense from open source. The good products are in open source. Second is, actually, when you say open source, it also has an undershade of a whole lot of licensing schemes. Not all open source come in the same way to be used. And a good number of them actually need the derivatives to be put back in open source. So in terms of open source hardware, some of those models are still, I believe, is still being worked out. Software has evolved through that, and you exactly know that you are open sourcing with what kind of license. So what are your liabilities and what are your gains?
Thank you. And with this one, I think we need to kind of come to the end of the session. Please join me and kind of thanking the very distinguished panelists with a big